Hello everyone, welcome back to Our Town. I'm Jill Hindley Lawrence, and on behalf of NCTV, I'd like to welcome a candidate for re-election for Norfolk School Committee today. My guest is Medora Champagne.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here, and you have, this isn't the first time we've sat to chat here about running for school committee. Mm-hmm. But so glad to have you back. And you are a candidate for re-election.
Yes.
For the Norfolk School Committee, I know I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and also specifically about your time on the school committee so far.
Sure. So my name is Medora Champagne. I moved to Norfolk in 2007.
Okay.
So it is creeping up on 20 years in town at this point,
right,
which is kind of a big milestone.
I know.
I live here in town with my husband Kevin, and we have 2 children, one of whom is actually in high school now, so that's how long it's been since I've been on school committee, and then another one who's still a student at the Freeman Kennedy School.
Okay.
And we have a slightly crazy dog named Freckles who lives with us as well and requires lots of exercising and walking. So professionally, I'm an attorney. I've been practicing in Massachusetts for about 20 years.
Oh, cool. I don't know if I remembered that.
Well, then that's good. I'm not living up to any bad attorney stereotypes, if that's true. So I primarily have been a litigator professionally, and then I'm also trained in alternative dispute resolution and mediation.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
you are perfect for town politics.
one would hope so. I do my best. So since we have moved to town, both myself and my husband have been pretty engaged in the community and interested in volunteering. We started off, I think, the way a lot of folks do in town. I was a soccer coach.
Yes, right.
I have been and I still am actually a volunteer softball coach in town. We're active with the parent volunteering for the local Boy Scout troop as well. Our son has been with them since he was Cub Scout in kindergarten.
Wow. And
so
he's a high schooler now.
He's a high schooler now, yeah.
Cool.
So we are, I have thoroughly enjoyed volunteering when asked to. I think I've taught some merit badge classes on being a good citizen in your local community. I have also done the overnight trip to the summer camp for the Boy Scouts. I really enjoy the merit badge class.
Yeah,
what I would say about.
Have you slept on that ship or at the Ecotarium? That's what I want to know, because
I have. I have done. My husband did the battleship overnight a few years ago
the roughest
on a cold, rainy day. Yes, and then I have done the Museum of Science overnight, which was a very fun one.
Right.
That was right before COVID, one of our last outings.
Yeah, and I did ours right before COVID too.
That's funny.
Yeah, ours was Girl Scouts.
Right.
But yeah, so we both slept on the floor of the Museum of Science.
Yeah. We were up in the,
dinosaur?
human, not near the dinosaur. We were up on one of the second floors near sort of like how DNA works and things like that.
Fun. And we slept under the T-Rex.
That is awesome. That was a good pull for you guys. So, in addition to volunteering, and then I've been a volunteer with NCL, I've been a volunteer with the PTO, sort of those sort of organic things that you fall into as your kids enter the school system, which have been wonderful, both fantastic organizations. And then in addition to that, I was an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for, they had a vacancy, and I think I was with them for maybe around 18 months to 2 years.
Prior to
school committee, and then my school committee career began in 2018. So we had a contested race that year in 2018, and I was successful in my endeavor to get on the committee, and I have been on the committee for the past 6 years.
6 years. So this is 2 terms, 2 full terms.
2 full terms. So this would be my 3rd term. I think I'm creeping up on Thomas Doyle, who served 13 years, I believe, if I keep up like this.
Yeah.
So very happy that he was on the committee when I first came on. He was a tremendous mentor. And since being on the school committee, it has not necessarily been what I expected or anticipated or thought it would be, but it has also been really challenging and really rewarding, and it's been a tremendous experience. I feel like I still have some work to do and some unfinished business that I'd like to take care of, and so hence my desire to run for a third term. Yep.
Well, we'll parse that out a little bit in a couple minutes about what you'd like to still address and future goals. So I guess what made you decide to run in the first place? You covered that, and I guess actually, why don't we go ahead before we talk about challenges or such? Let's talk about both accomplishments that you feel that your first 2 terms, and then maybe spin that into, what would you further like to accomplish?
Sure, certainly. So the focus for me on school committee has really hinged on budget and infrastructure.
Okay.
And that there are many other concerns and many other important initiatives that are going on, but all of them do eventually tie directly back to primarily budget and to an extent the infrastructure that's available in the local school system.
Right.
So some highlights.
Okay, so those are your 2 top. No, that's a nice way to kind of categorize.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Budget is always that's the job of the school committee is to manage the budget, right?
100%.
Yeah. So that's like and then the infrastructure. Okay, as it comes along. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think that long-term planning, I tend to be, I'm what is it, the ant and the grasshopper, like the old fable. I'm more of the ant, like I'm preparing heavily
ahead of for
winter.
the winter.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right,
and so I think I've always wanted to have a long-term fiscal plan for the school district. I think that our superintendent, Dr. Alardi, takes the same approach. So I felt very comfortable having those conversations with her. And some highlights in that respect would be, for example, in 2020, so during the pandemic, when we had our town meeting out on the football field at King Philip, right? Yeah. We were successful in asking the town to establish a special education stabilization fund for the local elementary schools, which would allow us to set some funding aside into a reserve fund that could address more efficiently and more quickly unanticipated and unbudgeted special education costs to the district, so that you're not scrambling
every time.
And to really ultimately as well, it was important to do that so that we could quickly respond to the needs of any students who had requirements that required additional funding. Right. So that was a big priority, a big goal. It would also help us year over year budget more efficiently internally and in our discussions with the town. So we're actually accessing that this year.
Okay, so it's a separate pot, so to speak, so that it's available if needed. Because it's more, I assume that special education needs can be more unpredictable than just enrollment, because you can look ahead, right? You can kind of predict enrollment a little bit as it's coming for, especially at Freeman. You can predict it, but special education needs can sometimes come up like more like later, last minute. Is that right? Or
they can. I think that programming can change for individual students. You can have students who move into the district who have significant needs, and the goal of our local school district is to always provide the most appropriate, best fit educational services for any student in the district. Above and beyond, obviously special education services are legally required. Yes. But above and beyond that, the ability to be agile in our response to any student's needs was really what we were aiming for. And it has been, I wish we didn't have to be accessing it to the extent that we are this year, because it will be, depleted by almost 50% moving into the next budget cycle. But I'm so happy that we had set the money aside when we did, because it was kind of a rainy day fund, and it was pouring. So it was great to have that in reserve and be able to access it. And that actually is accessed in conjunction with the select board. So we had a joint meeting with them earlier this week where we voted to approve utilizing those funds.
Those funds, okay, which is I see. Okay, well that's a great accomplishment, and it sounds very logical to have that to be able to pivot and address those needs of the special population. Have you been you've been chair? Is that correct?
Yes, this is my second year as the chair.
That's what I thought. Okay, I wasn't sure how long. Okay, so this is your second year currently as chair. Okay, great. And I know that, I have been personally to meetings, and it seems like they are. They can be obviously for townspeople. They can be, oh well, there's a lot to discuss, and there's a lot of stuff that is. Just wrote things that you have to get through, right? Just go through but then there's hot topics, and I'm sure that can be a roller coaster a bit, and especially as chair, because you have to run the meeting and keep everything keep everything open to discussion, but also follow all the rules of the meeting. That's not an easy task. And but you have great professional experience, so I mean, that's really great. I didn't realize your professional background. Okay, so that was great to hear those the accomplishment. Is there anything else you want to touch on there from your school committee? Your years, your 6 years already, and then also future goal. Any other future goals?
Sure. So I think from an infrastructure standpoint, one of the other major projects that we undertook, which was kind of immediately preceding COVID, was the replacement and some of the roof and some structural repairs at the H.L. Loveday School. So that was it became kind of a hotly debated topic in town, and it was a large expenditure. So I think that it was wonderful that residents were engaging in a conversation around something that was going to have a meaningful financial impact. That was fantastic. I was happy to see that the project was approved at town meeting, and we were able to deliver that project quickly, so on time for the beginning of school the subsequent year, and significantly under budget as well. So that was it was a great project with in conjunction with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So
is that a grant that came through?
Yes, it was a grant. So they have twice granted our local district significant sums. So they granted, I think, about $1 million in association with the roof and repair project, and that was around a $3 million project. So it was a significant percentage.
Wow.
And they were responsible for funding right around 50% of the new Freeman building when it was originally built.
The FK. The Freeman Kennedy. Oh wow! I think I knew that this was the second. So that's great that it worked out with the HOD roof, and you got that grant funding.
It was fantastic. And then kind of a third. Whether it's an accomplishment or a battle scar, I'm not sure, but serving on the school committee during COVID was, it was a lot, and I think that it was really meaningful work to be doing. It was very different to jump into that. I had been on the committee for about 2 years when COVID began. We went through a shift in the makeup of our committee. We had 2 new members join that subsequent May. And it was, we were all sort of doing our best, staying engaged, and trying to keep sort of ahead of the curve as far as information that was being relayed from the state and from DESE, and understanding, what education was really going to look like and how we could best meet the needs of the students in the district families, parents, caregivers, and really engaging with the community to try and understand. It was a really diverse group of opinions and preferences and thoughts, and trying to stay objective, because obviously every member of the committee had
was
subjective.
Many were parents.
Right. We all had thoughts about what we wanted to see for our individual children, and needing to sort of parse that out and look objectively as far as school policy about what was going to be
for the whole community.
What was going to be appropriate for the whole community, and frankly, feasible. Because again, with infrastructure, back in the days of social distancing, it became challenging to have everybody where we wanted them to be.
Right. No, that's right, and that was the case. And just as a note on that, because that was a chunk of your 6 years so far, right? That was a chunk of it, because it lasted for. Well, there was different COVID policies that went on for almost 2 years. If you go from the very beginning of the shutdown of the world all the way through the end of wearing masks, right? So it was about just actually over 2 years.
I would say a little over 2 years. And if as we move into my kind of long-term goals for the next school committee term, my argument is that COVID is not over for the students who had to live through it.
Oh, absolutely, right. No, that's great. That's a good point. There's lots of discussion, I think, about which age took the hardest hit, and I think there's arguments for many different ages, because 100%. I had the high school kids, high school senior, you think, but then you think about a kindergarten or first graders, and you think, how did that, that was difficult. But I will just to say, as trying to be a neutral, even I was a parent through that, of course, but it was difficult in any Massachusetts, or other states too, but in any Massachusetts city or town, because the the rules, regulations that were coming from the state, from the Department of, I called it, Department of Education, but the Department of, is it Elementary and Secondary Education, technically,
yep.
Jesse. They were very, very stringent, they could be, and straightforward, and so therefore the towns had to work within this very tight circle of those rules. And so school committee members and principals, superintendents, principals, really there was not a lot of leeway and a lot of time for things, right? Because those rules were coming in, and they were from Jesse. It was not easy.
It was certainly a challenge. I mean, I think that it taught me a tremendous amount about how education works at the state level in Massachusetts, not just with respect to sort of directives and objectives set forth by DESE, but also from a funding standpoint, and just how to manage the interplay at the local level when you're sort of being given one standard across the board, which I mean it's state education essentially. So I understand that, but also needing to navigate a path forward to have that one-size-fits-all approach actually fit in the town that you're in with the resources that you have.
Right, and our town is small, right? So I mean, it's small compared to some of the big suburbs, I guess. Okay, well that was great to hear. So you've touched on future goals for this. If reelected for this third term, do you want to talk about, say the school expansion project? And I know we touch on the budget struggles as well, but do you want to touch on that, the school expansion, a little bit?
Sure. I think that anyone who's following kind of educational topics in town is aware that we are considering what to do with the ever-increasing enrollment in our student population.
Right. And is that Medora's, does it appear that, I was wondering this, does it appear that it's a pre-K through 6 big bubble, or does it seem like it's maybe, I was curious, is it coming, or is it seem like it's more concentrated on the Freeman Kennedy, or is it,
Sure.
Running out of room everywhere, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, the short answer is we're running out of room everywhere.
Yeah.
And then the second short answer is that it has not ever been described by any of our demographers as a bubble.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
It is.
Good to know.
It is. There was certainly a jump in enrollment. I think it's actually interesting. Again, at the same joint select board school committee meeting we had earlier this week, the most recent demography data was presented with enrollment projections for the next, I think, 5 to 10 years were actually laid out. And so we are looking at, to preface the whole conversation, currently we are out of space at the HL of Day School.
Right.
The music room has been converted into an instructional classroom. Right. Music is delivered on a cart. We have server rooms that have been converted into instructional spaces. Right. The technology lab is not a dedicated technology lab anymore, and I could go on and on, right? And I'll leave it at that. We are 100%, 105%, I think, out of space at the HL of Day School. We are starting to see those spacing constraints migrate up to Freeman Kennedy as students move up to Freeman Kennedy. We have had, as a school committee, this topic has been under consideration since around 2017. So it predates my time on the committee, and it's one of the things that kind of drew me to run during my original term. But the issue really is, it's not so much is there a problem at this point, but rather what is the most appropriate solution for the problem that's going to be a long-term fix, but be fiscally responsible, I think, as it is going to be something that, everyone in town, not just members of the school community, parents and caregivers and families, everyone in town will have to bear the cost of it. And so I think that the goal here is to really look at what it is that's required to meet the needs of growing enrollment and how we can address those needs most appropriately. So the school committee undertook a feasibility analysis of a permanent building expansion to Freeman Kennedy. That was completed last year.
That's right.
Subsequent to that, I think just based upon concerns around awareness of the issue, and also around the costs that are going to be associated with any solution. The school committee brought forth a warrant article at last fall's town meeting asking to create an entirely separate committee tasked with studying this issue and available solutions. And that committee is more, the makeup is more like what the fire station building committee was. So
it's a separate town committee.
It's a separate town committee
from the Norfolk School Committee.
Yes. So the individuals on that, there are school representatives there because obviously you want folks with educational expertise to comment on what an appropriate solution would be for educational space shortfall.
Dr. Alardi is on it.
Yeah, Dr. Alardi is on it. We have 2 members who are appointed by the school committee to serve on that committee separately. So that's myself and Grace Lockhead. And then we have 3 resident appointees who do not have an affiliation with the school committee and have graciously volunteered their time to come in and assess and evaluate what a solution might look like and what the best long-term fit is going to be for the district. So at this point in the game there, we know that we do still have an issue. We know that we will have an issue in 5 years and in 10 years from consistent growth in the student population. There's no indication that the population of students is going to drop.
So it's not like that. I see.
Correct.
It seems like it's an exponential.
Right. I think there will
like
be. I think there will be a slow to the growth at some point, but you're not going to see a regression. Is what all of the demographers have told us. So when I say it hasn't been described as a bubble, that's that's what I mean. So a temporary solution is not really a viable option, in my opinion, but what's being studied are different levels of long-term solutions that might be available. So that could be a permanent building structure, it could be a modular building structure, and I think that the separate committee, the school building committee, is going to be tasked with both identifying the costs associated with all of the options and then coming together as a group to decide what their recommendation is as far as what the best fit will be for the schools.
Got it. So will their recommendation of this school building committee then bring that back to the school committee, a separate school committee, or will they go to town? I guess I don't know what the next steps are, but I guess.
So similar, I mean, there will certainly be coordination between both the school committee and the select board. But again, similar to the fire station project, the building committee will own the recommendation and the requests, and that committee, their charge will continue through, if individuals want to continue serving, will continue through both design of whatever project, whatever solution is selected, and then the construction if they're willing to stay in it for the long haul.
Okay, good to know. In just one last clarification, are they looking at both schools expansion, or only, or is that to be determined, or is it only FK?
Sure. So the idea, and again, this is what has been discussed up until this point, and these are the options that I think the architects are going to be presenting moving forward. The concept is to move the early education, so preschool and pre-K, from H. Olive Day to Freeman to free up space over there without having to undertake any major construction at the HOD.
At the second school. Okay, exactly. That's right. And that's been out there for a little, at least a year, because I remember that's right. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for catching me and catching us up on all of that.
Sure. I encourage you to. Our super exciting building committee meetings are available on YouTube.
I should watch them all. So before we go, before we kind of start to wrap and maybe touch on budget, let's first switch gears for a moment. And I was wondering what do you, so you're a school committee member, you're a Norfolk taxpayer, town of Norfolk, you're a townsperson, you're also the parent of children that have gone through the Norfolk public schools. What do you think that the Norfolk schools do well?
I think that, so one of the things we do at every school committee meeting is read the mission statement of the Norfolk Public Schools, and I will not try to from memory remember all of it, but the gist of it is to create a safe and joyful learning environment that meets and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of its diverse student population. And I say that at least once a month, if not more, at school committee meetings, but I do feel that overall, that is a goal that is met. I think that I have 2 very different children, extraordinarily different personalities and different learning styles and just social styles, and both of them came out. Well, my second one has not come out yet, but she's
close. Right?
She's shaping up this way, right? I see them becoming, thoughtful individuals who are capable of critical thinking, and who are problem solvers, and who are able to express, empathy for people that they are kind of meeting in their day-to-day life, and see and celebrate differences, but in a very empathetic way, and in a constructive way, to come together and just be aware of their surroundings and be good, productive citizens in the world. So I appreciate that about the Norfolk Public Schools. And
they're still young. I mean,
they're still young.
Yes. So no, but that's great that like showing empathy. But
I think that I feel comfortable sending my children to school every day. That is not to say that there have not been times when we have run into bumps in the road, or issues have come up. And I think that one of the other things that the school does, both schools do really well at the building level, and then the administration does well, is to provide open lines of communication and be very responsive to community and parent caregiver concerns. So anytime I have had an issue, even while I'm on school committee, I can pick up the phone and say, I'm parent calling, I'm a little concerned about X, Y, and Z, and I feel that I am being heard, and I feel like there's a thoughtful response from the schools as far as how things could be addressed. So I think that communication is a strong suit. I
do too, and I mean, I'm a few years out, but I always felt that communication was strong for both schools, or both administrations when I was there, when we were there. Okay, well, that's great. So, we touched on school expansion a little bit, but like you said, you're running for school committee, and it's now that those recommendations are out of your hands. At least it's in a separate committee. I mean, although you're on the committee, but that's not you're not running. You're running for.
Correct.
So no, I'm glad we touched on it, because it's information. I think it sounds like it's good to have an update. But as far as the budget, I know. Well, I'm a KP parent now, and there's huge budget stuff going on, and budget struggles are across the board in so many towns. Is there anything you want to share or update on that?
Sure, certainly. So this year has been a challenging year. Last year was also a challenging year for the budget. We are getting into a bit of a pattern where we are having challenging years. And I think that the kind of causal issues behind that are not always straightforward, and it's not one thing, right? I think that there is an issue in Massachusetts overall with respect to how state funding flows into education. I think that the Chapter 70 formula for educational spending has not kept pace with the cost of education. Norfolk at this point is considered a well-performing, relatively affluent school district. The earmark we get under Chapter 70 is about $30 a student, but it's actually based upon a prior year's enrollment. So in a class, in a district with growing enrollment, it actually is not that much.
You're dividing it.
Right, so you have to walk it back. So I know that there are some initiatives at the state level to take a look at Chapter 70 and reevaluate how funding flows into districts, because I have not encountered a school district where they are happy with funding or feel that they have enough money at this point.
So much extra.
And so I think that that's an issue. I do think that similarly with circuit breaker reimbursements for special education services, I don't think that that's the most efficient, effective system to cover some of those expenses. So I think that at the state level, that merits evaluation. And then locally, Norfolk is a town that's had a growing student population. Educational costs have been going up. During the pandemic, there was a lot of federal aid and some state aid available for kind of COVID-related expenses, and even a little bit for recovery services. So we had utilized some of those funds to have math support specialists to come in with kind of recouping lost learning that had occurred during the pandemic. Those grants, the ESSER grants, that money's gone. Unfortunately, the learning loss and the issues that we see in students, both academically and with respect to sort of mental health recovery and social emotional learning, those have not bounced back to pre-pandemic
Right.
kind of performance levels. So our MCAS scores are still consistently under what they were before the pandemic. They've recovered a little, but that full recovery has not been made. So going forward, this year, level services would have been closer to an 8% budget. That's not a sustainable number. So we're not bringing forward a level services budget. There are reductions in positions and programs happening at at the local level.
Yeah.
And for example, one of those is additional math support that's being eliminated. And so I feel very strongly as a goal moving forward to not let the issues that arose from COVID be ignored because
because you don't have the money,
right? And because people, I think it's human nature to say that was a really terrible time. It's over. Let's
move on.
let's move on.
And
meanwhile, you have kindergartners who were receiving hybrid half day. When their peer groups before and after them had full day in-person kindergarten, and that group of students is rolling up and continues to need some supports to be where they are to access and address the curriculum that's being delivered as they get older. So. I think that, from a funding standpoint, I'm very concerned about having available resources to put towards initiatives and curriculum to continue to support students. I think that we have a great line of communication with our local town administration and the select board around funding. It's very transparent. We worked very well with them during the pandemic to say, okay, we understand that the budget needs to be walked back here, but maybe at fall town meeting, if there's more than we thought, can we restore some of this? And it's been a very open dialogue. And I do think that collaboration in that respect is very important, and just transparency about what is necessary and why it's necessary. But another, for instance, from this year is the district needs to adopt a new ELA curriculum. That need should have been addressed last year. And it had to be deferred because of budget concerns.
Because of budget.
And so that is an approximately $250,000 expense. And we are carrying forward that expense in our budget because we know it's critically necessary to keep our curriculum competitive and to try and recoup, again, some learning loss from COVID. But it remains to be seen how it's going to be fully funded, or whether that expense is going to have to be broken down and some portions of that adoption will need to be deferred. So it is
in pieces.
We are at so I think we're at a point now where the quality of the education we're able to provide and students' ability to access curriculum and learning is going to begin to become impacted by this kind of consistent budget cycle. So I think
sounds like it.
And so from my perspective, the only way out is through, right? So you have to have the challenging conversations.
Good way to say it.
And it's important to be transparent so that community members understand what's happening. Other town boards understand what's happening, and we're able to come together and sort out, what can be done to address this moving forward.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really good answer.
Oh, thank you.
No, it is. There's so much detail, but there's also keeping your eyes on the prize, kind of, like keeping your getting that perspective that this is about. There's learning loss, and you can't just say, well, our budget doesn't allow for, we don't have money to address learning loss. Like, it's just, that's not the job of the public schools, right? Like, that's not staying with the mission statement. So, okay, well, thanks for explaining. I think I thought of a question while you were talking, but it's okay. It'll come back. Okay. So that was really well explained. I'm so happy to hear the detail, and I'm sure that people watching can, especially who are paying close attention to budget and the school expansion potential. So let's do final thoughts or comments as we wrap up, because if there's another topic that you feel like we haven't touched on.
No, I think we've been pretty exhaustive.
I would say we've been thorough. No, and so any other, like we said, you are already served you've already served 6 years. That's right. 3-year terms. Yeah. And so running for a third term. Final comment, final thoughts?
Sure. I think I gave serious thought to running for re-election again.
You did.
And I think that I ultimately decided to run, and this was in conversations with other stakeholders in town, you know, my family,
right,
you know,
I'm sure.
and you know,
your husband,
my husband, my kids, who you know are. It's a different thing to be kind of in the public eye now as they're older and more aware of things like that. But you know, they were all, you know, wonderfully supportive of my choice to run again. I think that COVID provided a great learning experience, but it also sort of interrupted the momentum of some of what I was trying to accomplish as a school committee member. And I think that I would very much like to have an opportunity to continue serving, so that
you
I
want to
can
recoup those years.
So
too.
I want to recoup. I want to recoup
Yeah.
the years as well, and I want to leave school committee feeling as though the local elementary district is in the right position to be. To function efficiently, to have appropriate, you know, responsible funding going into the future, and to have, you know, infrastructure needs met in the go forward as well. I don't want to feel like I'm walking out of, you know, something that has, you know, I like to clean my kitchen every night before I go to sleep, right? So
yes.
it's the same idea.
Yes,
I don't want to leave until I feel like I've cleaned everything up the way that I would like to see it.
Put it put everything where you think it should be.
Put away the way it needs to be, precisely. And so. You know, that's really the driving force. I do also think that there is certain value in experience on the committee.
Yes.
So we have a lovely committee now of, you know, volunteers who have been elected 2 last year, 1 the year prior. And then, you know, Jen Wynn is not running for re-election, obviously, this year, so we will have another new member this year. I do feel strongly that having a committee member who has experience with up and down budget cycles, who has had experience with other infrastructure projects, and who, no small part either, I've also been on the district's collective bargaining team.
Oh, okay.
So I think that moving forward, that will come up, I think, if I am reelected in the final year, I think I would feel
26 or something.
yes, something like that. And
that consistency.
But also just the ability to provide some feedback, you know, about the process and, you know, what's involved there, because I think, you know, I feel strongly about providing our teachers with fair and equitable contracts, and, you know, I think that having had some experience in that respect in the past could be beneficial in the future.
Yes, make it what you think it would it'll help keep things going smoothly.
Perhaps I am overestimating the value I will bring to the situation,
Yeah.
but I do think that having some perspective and some experience is always helpful.
And you learned from Thomas too,
yeah,
right?
and I learned from Thomas too. Exactly. It was a very seasoned
Doyle.
board that we walked onto, and I was thrilled that Thomas ran for his last term as well. So it was a great way to sort of hand off the last rounds of institutional knowledge and transition out. Yep.
Yes, that's really cool. I remember my question, which was it was very, but it was more just that the state. It was about state funds, but you already addressed that. It was more, I'm just surprised that the COVID funds. I was surprised in Massachusetts that there's not more like post-COVID funding recovery for the learning loss. That was what it is. That, I mean, I'm actually, you know, I know you said that there were funds that came through, but that was more about immediate, more of the during. But you know, there's definitely researched and published studies of learning loss, and so you'd think that Massachusetts, being really the leader in the country in education, right? No, Massachusetts is often in number 1 or number 2. Where you think that would have, and given how stringent everything happened in our state during the pandemic, you'd think there'd be some funds. So that was just what I had thought of, and
I think that it's unfortunate. I think. With respect to something like COVID, again, it's human nature, I think, to try to put the bad time in the past, right? But unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of being able to do that when we're still trying to recover.
Educate children.
And you know, I mean, similarly with respect to just budgeting issues, I've said it to anyone who will listen. You know, I think folks see school buses driving around through town. They see kids getting on, kids getting off.
Everything must be fine.
Everything must be fine. You know, it's okay. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think that what's really going to be critical are just some long-term planning and really frank conversations around what the needs are.
Right, just being realistic about it, because it spans a huge whole generation of children, from the little ones to the big ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
So
parents too. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
Yep.
No, that's such great perspective, Medora, because like you said, out of your 6 years, you had a big chunk that was dealing with something that was unprecedented, as they call it. It was
we were definitely finding our way in the dark.
Yeah, right.
Bit there. Yeah.
Yes. And so great. Well, you provide consistency. You provide very thoughtful problem solving and great leadership. And you are running for re-election for your third term, Norfolk School Committee, and the election is Tuesday, May 7th.
It is, and actually early voting opened today.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
great.
So I'm
so
headed over after I'm done here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to vote on the 7th, I think.
I do. I will.
Yeah.
I vote early in an instance where I need to be at the polling place, because in my first election, when it was contested, I almost forgot to.
Right.
With
you
my
were
signs and talking to people, and then I realized, I need to actually go into the building.
Oh, yeah.
So I get it done early.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Get that off your plate. Okay, well, Medora Champagne, it's been lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came in. And for more information, we can add do you have a page or a website that people?
I do. I have a Facebook page. If you want that information, I can.
Just tell us what it is right now.
Oh, it's I believe it's Medora Champagne for Norfolk School Committee.
Yeah. Okay, and we can add that to the credits. So
fantastic.
that'll be on. So just so it's in writing as well.
Wonderful.
Well, Medora, thanks again. Yeah, It was really great to hear all of your thoughts and inputs and updates. Because you've already served for 6 years, and we really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
and on behalf of Norfolk Community TV, I'm Jill Hindley Lawrence. Thanks for watching.